Agenda item 10.4, notice of motion, support for early childhood Vietnamese bilingual program and advocacy. I'll call for Councillor Jorge Jorquera to move a motion regarding to agenda item 10.4.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I can see it. Glasses, no glasses. The Council, in acknowledgement of its December 2020 motion supporting community languages and their importance for cultural literacy and multiculturalism, recognises the importance of concrete advocacy in this regard. 2, acknowledges that in the context of the loss of the Vietnamese bilingual program at Footscray Primary School and the significant numbers of people of Vietnamese heritage in our LGA, Maribyrnong Council has a special responsibility to advocate in support of the Vietnamese community's language preservation. 3, supports the efforts by the local community to develop Vietnamese English bilingual language programs in educational settings in the city of Maribyrnong. 4, will lend concrete support to the community not-for-profit organisation Viet Speak in its current objective of developing a Vietnamese English bilingual program, bilingual language program in an early childhood setting in Braybrook, where 30% of the population speak Vietnamese at home. 5, acknowledges the importance of these efforts to preserve community/heritage languages as part of its Racism Not Welcome campaign adopted June 2021.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lamb. Are there any questions or points of clarification, Councillors? Not at all. Would the mover like to speak to them? Oh.
Just to...
Sorry, yep.
Yeah. Probably just for the benefit of, because there have been discussions about, and I mean, obviously we reference in here, provide concrete support, but there has been a financial sum flagged in support. So I'd just like to acknowledge, and just for transparency, what that might look like, what will be the process for Viet Speak to come forward to council if they are looking for financial support, and how that will be considered in deliberations, you know, when we look at our next budget process.
So through the Mayor, yes, we have just opened a submission process for the budget for 22-23, and we have received an application from Viet Speak, and they have requested $25,000 toward this program. So the process for that, Councillor Carter, is that will be considered as part of the budget process next year in 2022, and the final decision on the budget is of course made in June 2022. So that will go in with other submissions. So we've asked for early submissions this time as a trial to see how that goes, and then we'll also have further submissions later when the draft budget is out. So councillors, you'll have discussion about that during next year.
Subsequent question. If I can, through the chair to Councillor Jorquera as the... Yep. Just wanted to ask, is this intended with the financial contribution that is being requested by Viet Speak to be a once-off, or is it a recurring request against the council budget?
It's conceived of as seed funding.
Yep.
Once off, yeah.
Yep, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillors. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Wait, or are there any questions or points of clarification, Councillors, before we proceed? Nothing at all. Perfect. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Sorry,
yes, Jorge? Please. Look, I'll try not to be too long because as everyone's well aware, I think certainly in this chamber, but I think in sections of the community who I've worked with in the West, I'm particularly passionate about this issue from 2 points of view. First of all, obviously as being part of the migrant community myself, and valuing the importance of language as really as being to some degree at the heart of any meaningful multiculturalism, but also from the point of view of having been a lifelong educator. From both of those points of view, it makes me particularly passionate, and through the lived experience that I've had in this city, a big part of my sort of, if you like, political involvement in community type politics, local politics, has been through education, through migrant communities, through organising around language. I was lucky enough to be school council president for a while and long-term council member of Footscray Primary School, which had the only Vietnamese English bilingual program in Australia, and sadly that was terminated, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So obviously I'm very passionate about the issue. It pertains in the first instance, to the Vietnamese community, such an important contributing part of our community here in the city of Maribyrnong, but also it really does pertain to all the migrant communities in this city and in the West. As a friend of mine from VMC put it, who's Karen background, he said to me, of course I support Vietnamese bilingual programs. If the Vietnamese community can't achieve this, we've got no chance. And I think that speaks quite truthfully to the matter. A couple of concrete things I think are worth saying about it, because there is some wording here that may not be familiar to people, obviously, especially not involved in, who haven't had the privilege of being involved in language education or in the education system. So I think it is worth speaking to a couple of concrete things in the motion. There's specific reference to community and heritage languages. The schooling system obviously does language. In Australia, it probably doesn't, well, it definitely doesn't do it very well compared to Europe, but it does language. Different states have different regulations around this, but most have some sort of foreign languages taught, usually very minimally. The typical school experience of a student is 45 minutes a week of a language, and of course the typical experience at the end of 6 years of education is that you don't even remember the numbers, let alone anything else. You don't need to read the research. The evidence is pretty obvious in that regard. So there has been an effort for a long time now amongst linguists and educators to promote bilingual programs, and they do exist. They exist in a lot of private schools, especially in Victoria, and it's quite a few. I think at the moment about 12 public schools and other early education and secondary settings have bilingual programs, which are much more extensive. So, for example, the Footscray Primary one had different times varied, but a minimum of 7 up to 15 hours. While I'm being passionate about the issue, I just wanted to add that my youngest son is about to finish school, year 12, and we were looking for videos of him and whatever the other day, and we happened to find amongst them, I wish I could show it here, because there's a beautiful little video of him singing in Vietnamese an entire song, and then going through, what was in the song, which was a result of that bilingual program. And even though obviously we're not always aware of this, educators are aware of the fact that language learning is cognitively enriching across the board. It helps everybody. You don't have to be from a Vietnamese background. If you're involved in Vietnamese or any other bilingual program, you are going to be enriched educationally. So there's all that side to it. So I think probably said enough. Just to speak to the fifth point there, I do think it's important to link this to the Council's initiative and support for initiative around support for the Racism Not Welcome campaign, because obviously language, as I said before at the outset, is at the heart of meaningful multiculturalism. We obviously do not want to reduce multiculturalism to menus, choice from menus. It is a much richer thing than that, and language is at the heart of it, because when people lose language, they can't communicate with their families, with their grandparents, etc. And of course, they can't bring everything that comes with language to the broader community. So in that regard, I think it's worth having that fifth point in there as part of that campaign. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yes, briefly, I think Councillor Jorge already mentioned a lot on that. I think language is powerful. So, you speak in another language. I mean, for those who don't know me, that I, in mid 1980, that I ran a Vietnamese school in Kensington for about more than 10 years. So children love it, and of course I always encourage the children to learn the second language, regardless what language. Mother tongue is very important, where they can communicate with their relatives and their family from overseas, because they're not fluent in English. And I think I myself, I'm very proud that I am bilingual, because I feel that even I go overseas anywhere, that I say, why didn't I learn Japanese before? I learned French, and I said that, well, why isn't I fluent speaking Japanese? So I know what people don't rip me off, or they don't don't talk, I don't understand what they're talking about. It's very frustrated, just learn like that. That's why it's so important for that, and wholeheartedly supporting that sort of program. program to encourage that the children learning another language, a Vietnamese program, and reading the story. I remember that we talk about interculture. Our council, we are on an international interculture program, and there's 2018 that the CEO, Mr. Stephen Wu, and I, we reading English and Vietnamese story for the student in Ashley Street, you know, that's that shopping center, and you know, all the adults and the children, they come and I just listen, even understand the language, but then, you know, two people, this is great fun, you know, for the children, and very beneficial for the children and their parents as well. You can see that Councillor Jorge said that children come and singing Vietnamese program, and you know, the parents don't understand, but you know, they feel very proud. You know, yeah, I think my grandson speaks, you know, learning 3 languages: Italian, Vietnamese, and English. So it's a wonderful project. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any speakers for the motion? Councillor Clarke.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I have to commend this motion to you, and councillors. For mine, what I find remarkable as a nation, a multicultural nation like Australia, how few people who are part of the established community here actually can't speak a second language. And maybe it's because of the, you know, and I say this as someone who is very staunchly English in heritage, but also you can throw in a bit of Scots, a bit of Irish, and I'm 1/8 Greek. Very proud to be 1/8 Greek, absolutely. But I can't speak any Greek at all. I speak a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Vietnamese, and Indonesian. I wish I could speak Vietnamese. Really, it is a sign of a more developed community where one has the capacity to speak a variety of languages. Some of my relatives could speak 4 and 5 languages at the same time. Could be speaking in Arabic, could be speaking in Greek, could be speaking in Italian and English at once. And I've got troubles with English at the best of times, let alone anything else. I'd be hopeful, councillors, that this could be perhaps the forerunner of something that really, I think, needs to be seen to take place. And not just at preschool or kinder. You see, it's one thing to do it at preschool, but it's got to be continued into primary school, and it's got to be continued into secondary school. And I have to say, councillors, you know, and I did German at high school, and we did just 2 or 3 hours a week. You don't learn German 2 or 3 hours a week. You learn it through a bilingual program, a total immersion program, where you speak English and you speak another language. You know, my partner's neighbours are about to move over to, I think, Bourne, where their daughter is being enrolled in a French-speaking preschool. And so they're actually moving from Ascot Vale to the other side of the city so that she can be totally immersed. For those people who've had the pleasure of trying to speak another language, the best way to go is total immersion. It isn't just an hour or 2 a week. So this it represents an opportunity. I make the point, councillors, this is not part of our remit, and I say that in the context of the concerns that, or questions that Councillor Carter has raised. You know, the state government, and I would suggest the federal government, if we're looking at this from a national perspective, has a responsibility here. You know, we are a multicultural nation. Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, Jew, Hindu, Sikh, we're all in it together. So let's learn, not just from the food, but from the language of each other. I think that this is a great opportunity. May others take the opportunity with us. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Congratulations.
Are there any speakers for the motion? Councillor Crawford?
Yeah, sorry, just briefly. I completely agree with what all the other councillors have said. I just wanted to raise the point that last week we were fortunate enough to meet with one of our traditional owners for this area, and I believe we're meeting with another on Friday. So representatives of the Maribyrnong and the Wurundjeri traditional owner groups, and I think, well, it's not going to be part of this particular motion. We should also, while we're talking about language, think about how we try to revive those traditional languages of this country, of this land, because that is, the language that has been spoken here for tens of thousands of years, in large parts has been lost, but certainly there is still plenty of the language around, and I would love to see that revived as much as it can be. So just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other speakers for the motion? Any other speakers against the motion? Just before we go through, I might say a few words again. From my own experience, being second generation Vietnamese, obviously this applies to a lot of us who, and especially my younger brother, who don't speak the language at all, who understand the language but struggle to say a single word to their grandparents. And it is frustrating when you're the one translating for your brother. And as everyone has seen in my opening speech, if my Vietnamese is that bad, you can imagine how bad my younger brother's is. And as such, to have a program like that is completely needed, let alone for the Vietnamese community. It just so happens to be the Vietnamese community within Braybrook because it's such a large community. It honestly could have been the Spanish community, the Korean community, the South Sudanese community wouldn't have mattered, to be fair. It just needed to be a community that was prevalent within the specific precinct. And in high school, I have not had the same experience as Councillor Clarke. I did Latin. Obviously, it's a not spoken language, so the furthest I got was to write. Yes, I know, unless I go to the Vatican, no one speaks it. But yes, and obviously the researchers who were present at that briefing that we did have did acknowledge that it was very, I guess, scary is one way to put it to her, that in Australia not many people spoke two languages, let alone 3 or 4 like she did. She spoke English, Dutch, Spanish, and I think one other language. Councillor Jorge, if you remember what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, but she spoke 4 or 5 different languages, and that kind of shook me that was a commonality in Europe, whereas in Australia it's a struggle to speak 2, let alone 1. So yes, it is very much needed to have a program like this, and of course full immersion is also required. But again, this is a process of development, and through the research I do hope that the program does extend further into the primary schools and high schools eventually. That's it from me. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you very much, councillors.